You may also have seen newspaper reports this weekend suggesting there's a rift between the ministers responsible for trying to resolve the energy crisis in the country. That is the Electricity Minister, who is apparently, reportedly, I should say, facing opposition from the likes of the Energy Minister, Gwede Mandashe, and the Public Enterprises Minister, Pravin Gordhan, who are resisting, according to these reports, having to hand over some of their responsibilities, if you will, their powers, in order for Ramaphosa to properly lead the country out of this moment of crisis. But President Ramaphosa has denied those claims and says the ministers are working well together. For more on this, let's speak to the SA National Energy Development Institute's Professor Sampson Mamphweli. Professor Mamphweli, a very good evening to you. I'm grateful for your time as always. We'll get to these reports of a rift between the ministers in a moment, but the key headline from Ramaphosa at that ANC briefing is that we're not going to come out of load shedding within one calendar year. Was that ever a sensible prediction, a sensible forecast?
Good evening to you and the viewers. Yes, it's a sensible forecast. Unfortunately, some of us knew about this for quite a long time. It has only been communicated now. We have been saying that if you look at the outlook in terms of the breakdowns at Eskom power stations, the coal fleet that's giving problems, we're not going to be able to resolve the problem as quickly as within this particular year, and that's mainly because we don't even know where the money to fix these power stations will come from, because the Eskom balance sheet cannot do it. Two, the Eskom board has led a process that led to a plan that was put in place at power station level to push the energy availability factor of these power stations to about 60% now by the end of this year. And that's the realistic plan. And if they manage to push the energy availability factor to 60%, it will still not be enough for us to avoid load shedding, because according to the IRP, which has been properly modeled and properly investigated, those power stations are supposed to operate above 70% energy availability factor for us to have what we call adequacy, basically for us to have adequate supply of electricity. So he is correct in saying that we will not be able to get out of load shedding within this year. However, if money is made available on an emergency basis and systems are put in place to ensure that we deal with the problem, and there's a lot of opportunity in the declaration of the national state of disaster, which was supposed to ensure that we fast track the implementation of the energy action plan. Load shedding would have been a thing of the past by the end of this year.
And the state of disaster declaration has now been done away with. The government said in its briefing when it was trying to explain this that that's because plans are already afoot to deal with the power crisis in the country. Others say it's because it realized it was going to lose a court case challenging the declaration. So without that declaration in place, how much more expensive do we expect these plans to be?
The plans are quite, we know that according to the Eskom root cause analysis, Eskom needs about 130 billion rands to fix the 6 power stations that are giving us problems. So that's the money that is required. I'm very much concerned, I must say, about the plans or the talks, because I haven't seen a plan. I've had talks by the electricity minister to extend the life of some of this coal fleet, and that comes at a huge cost as well. One would like to see a detailed costing that shows what is it that needs to be done in these power stations for their lifespan to be extended. Some of these power stations, the average age is about 40 years, and they were not properly maintained. So there's quite a lot of money that needs to be pumped into them for them to be able to give us some form of life extension. Right. That's one part. The second part is that the extension of the life of power stations at the moment is not going to help us deal with load shedding, because we have load shedding now, And the next power station to be closed down, I think it's going to be closed down around 2025. If we implement the energy action plan properly, by 2025, we shouldn't be talking about extending the life of any power station.
And that's the problem, isn't it? If we're going to, as a country, as per what's been mooted by the government, lean into or become more reliant on these coal-fired power stations, it's not exactly a system that is working optimally. And if it's unable to cope now, how will it be able to cope with coming pressure, as in the coming months, when it gets colder and people are more reliant on electricity and demand is up?
Yes, for me, the government or the electricity minister is pushing the government towards a territory where we shouldn't be worried about. We shouldn't be worried about the extension of life of the coal fleet at this point in time. We should be worried about waking the power stations that are in the ICU, for instance. You can't be having somebody lying in ICU and you're talking about plans of other things with that particular person after 2025 before getting that person out of ICU. That is exactly what is happening in my view, and I would like to see that particular plan. Winter is going to be very, very difficult. I think we've talked about this in the past. As things stand, Eskom is hovering around 15,000 megawatts of breakdowns, and they haven't been successfully been able to return to service the about 5,000 megawatts, close to 6,000 megawatts that is down for regular maintenance. So if the 5,000 to 6,000 megawatts is not back in time, and the breakdowns are still sitting at 15,000 megawatts with the partial load losses that we have seen so far, winter is going to be very, very difficult, because we expect that demand will shoot to between 34,000 and 35,000 megawatts. And if we don't bring other initiatives like the 1,000 megawatts that the electricity minister talked about from Mozambique, also which one would like to first confirm whether Mozambique will have that kind of electricity sitting and waiting for South Africa, then the winter looks very bleak.
I mean, I'm looking at you now. You're speaking to us via connection. You've had to go to your car because your neighborhood is being load shed. You and I remember a time when, on a Sunday night, the power cuts were an unusual occurrence, but now they've become a mainstay. It's become the norm. And we're hearing, even though government is denying it, that the three ministers who would basically have to work together to get the country out of this crisis are not getting along as they should have. The president and the ANC say, no, that's not true. But how important is it that there be enough collaboration and that some of the powers from the other ministries, i.e. minerals and energy and public enterprises, be transferred to the electricity ministers? And I'm wondering which one those would be in order to fast-track the process.
So when the president made the announcement for the electricity minister, and when he made the appointment, it was very clear what the role of the electricity minister would be. And there's a very clear distinction between the role of the electricity minister, the role of the mineral resources and energy minister, and the role of public enterprises minister. Mineral resources and energy minister is responsible for the regulatory environment, the regulatory aspects, including bringing in new generation capacity in line with the provision of the integrated resource plan. That's his role. The electricity minister cannot go into that particular role. The public enterprises minister is involved in governance, oversight, political oversight of Eskom, governance issues at Eskom. It needs to ensure that there's an operating board within Eskom, and that board has got a compact that they need to implement. That is the role of public enterprises minister, and the electricity minister has got nothing to do with that. The electricity minister has got to do with the implementation of the energy action plan, working with both Eskom and the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, because they are key players within the sector. So the powers that he needs is the power to be able to interact with Eskom directly on the plans that they have, which which were led, by the way, by the Public Enterprises Minister and the board. So for him, it's not to come up with new plans and new ideas and all that. It's to study the plans that are in place, advise on what he thinks needs to be done going forward, firm up certain things within the plan, project manage the implementation of the energy action plan through what the president described as the one-stop shop, which is basically means he needs to establish a certain kind of his department, and that department needs to have key experts and people who will be able to assist him in managing the project, which is at some point the Mineral Resources and Energy Minister referred to him as a project manager, which is exactly what the president had in mind when he came up with the plan. Whether there is a good relationship, working relationship between the three ministers or not, I think I'll take the president's word for it.
Professor Sampson Mamphweli, thank you so much with the SA National Energy Development Institute. Good to speak to you as always.